Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the channel, welcome to the page. My name is Valkyria Vardar. It's Valkyrie of the Veil. That's like the easier English words and translation or title for that. Beautiful. Welcome to the space today. Today we're talking about Pluto in Aquarius. There is a part 1 to this video. This is going to be a part 2. Just for reference, part 1 focuses more on battle magic, protection magic. There's a blog that goes along with that one as well. I will link it. I probably maybe already have somewhere up in the corners for you. So yeah, so that's going to be Pluto and Aquarius part 1. You don't necessarily need to watch them in order if you're watching this one first and haven't watched the first one yet. But this one's going to be about the Uranus portion of Pluto in Aquarius and kind of what we can expect from that. I have been, my happy little fingers and my happy little brain have been doing a bunch of research recently on Uranus, and which is so interesting. I love the like old pronunciations of words, and Uranus, it sounds so much better than something that sounds like a butthole, dude. That sounds great. Uranus, thank you. So good. Okay, anyways. So that I've been doing a bunch of happy little research recently. The spirits of my practice have had me in my research recently. Go look this up, get prepared, go study, go learn, go apply. So I've been doing that the beginning part of this week because, to be honest with you, there's a lot about Uranus, and there's a lot about Uranus that earlier this week, I didn't know. But now I do, and I want to come and share with you. So before we get into all the goodness, all the good information, not that my updates are bad information, but you know, it's like the stuff you came here, the good stuff, you know, the meal. Before we get to the meal, it's like a little toast. It's a little toast. It's my updates though. It's not a little toast. It's the updates. My first update is, guys, you booked out November on my calendar in like 2.5 days. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. For anyone else who's looking for an appointment or looking for a reading, there are multiple different sessions and different spaces that I hold for people. That booking link, I will put it down here. There's astrology readings, the birth chart readings. I do change readings, which is looking at the transits and how they work with your chart. If you have to plan stuff or you're looking into the future, that is going to be, or looking into the past too, honestly, that's true. I also do mentorship sessions. Those are going to be more magic focused, but they also work with astrology. And then I do readings, vision readings, tarot readings. So there's more information down below. I have, just kind of in response to some of the changes that are going on in the world, I don't know yet if TikTok is going to be around. I know this isn't my TikTok platform, but my largest audience right now is on TikTok. So in response to just kind of like some moving parts over there, or we don't know yet if it's going to be a moving part or not, if TikTok's gonna stay or not. I opened up my booking calendar through May and like the beginning of June currently, just in case people wanna get on the books or wanna book multiple sessions out into the future. Because if that platform does go away and they don't follow me on other channels, then booking with me might be one of the only spaces where I'm available to them. So just in response to that, and the cat says hello. So that's the other update. Beautiful, gorgeous. And I have just been sitting in awe recently because 2.5 days, literally 2.5 days. Minus like an hour, but that got booked out last night. So I guess 4 days if you want to get technical about it, but still. If you want to get updates on the podcast, when that goes out, if you want to get updates on other transit stuff, that is going to be on the blog. If you are not already signed up, there is going to be a link down below to sign up for the blog and to sign up for that space. I think also I'm going to be writing a blog to go along with this video. So enough with the introductions. Anything else important is going to be down there too. Let's get into the good stuff. Let's get into the meal, you know? Uranus is a primordial being. It's literally the planet that represents the primordial gods and the primordial mothers, the primordial fathers, the primordial birthing spirits, which in at least Norse, what I study, not all the time, but oftentimes they are not one gender or the other. So I say mothers and fathers, like the primordial mothers and fathers, but and sometimes there are primordial mothers and fathers. Okay, beautiful, gorgeous, love that for everybody. And also sometimes they are gender fluid. A lot of the times the primordial beings, the ones who come before us, are gender fluid, are non-binary. So happy surprise. Uranus is also the father of Saturn, the primordial being that is the father of time, the primordial being that is the father of order, the parent of order. Let's back it up a little bit. I know that we talked about Capricorn in the previous video, or Saturn, kind of Capricorn too, in the previous video. And I'm going to, because we're making the transition from Pluto being a Capricorn to Pluto being an Aquarius. And I learned something in this research that I've been doing that got me thinking on a little bit different of a level about Capricorn. And I want to share that with you now that we're headed out of Capricorn, just as a like, whoa, didn't know this, but think it's pretty cool. Capricorn is representative of literally the shape shifting of Saturn, how the god of time, how the god of order, which is also magic. So it's like, how do I say this? When you keep order and you keep structure and you're weaving and working and calling on the spirits magically, that's an order. Okay, now Capricorn is about how that god of time, structure, and order shape shifts. How is the magic actually practiced? How is the magic actually used? You could light a candle, but you're probably gonna light that candle differently than your neighbor, and probably they're gonna light it differently than somebody else. So how we apply our magic to the structure and the order, that's about Capricorn. And it blew my mind. It blew my mind because for like personal reasons about the magic that I practice, but then also I was thinking about it and that's just mind-blowing. That's just mind-boggling. That's like so cool. That's so cool. And it also makes sense because if you think about like going through initiations or going through like trials and tribulations after you start your spiritual journey or start practicing magic, and you like go through these hard things, that's really Capricorn oriented. People who go in and practice magic are probably at some point going to have to hit the hard lessons of Capricorn practices, because that is really what actually earns you the power in magic and in spirit. Dude, it blew my mind. Crazy. So that's a pretty cool thing I learned about Capricorn. So with Pluto moving through Capricorn, it's like in the underworld, in the ancestral spaces, with death and life. Because also too, let's break down some family ties first with the planets, okay? So we have Uranus. Uranus is the primordial being that births Saturn, okay? It gives life to Saturn. Saturn is the god of time, god of order, god of structure, and also three of the sons of Saturn are Pluto and Jupiter and Neptune. Interesting, okay? Interesting, because right now we have Saturn moving through Pisces, which is ruled by Neptune, and then we also have Pluto moving through Capricorn, which is ruled by Saturn. Okay, interesting. So we're gonna probably get more into the familial structure of Pluto and Jupiter and Neptune another time, because that's a whole other video. There's a whole bunch of stuff I've been learning recently about that. It's a whole other video. So we're gonna do some Neptunian things in another space. Super cool, okay? But that's just to give you like a breakdown of the hierarchy, because that's part of Saturn and part of Aquarius and part of Capricorn too. So that's true. I've also been realizing recently just how much of a shapeshifter Pluto actually is. Just how much of a trickster, just how much of a sneaky little guy Pluto actually is. Crazy. Pluto moving through Capricorn and the shapeshifting of magic means we've been turning into magic shapeshifters. We've been having to use our magic to shapeshift. That's part of the reason that Capricorn information kind of made me go, oh, whoa. But then if you look at the relationship between Uranus and Saturn, because that's what rules Aquarius. And Aquarius has to do with our social circles. It rules over our social circles and our social interactions. It also, if you look at, instead of looking at kind of symbolically, what does Aquarius do, and symbolically, what is Aquarius about? If you look at the rulers of Aquarius, so Uranus and Saturn, Uranus is what gives life. It's the primordial spirit. And then you have the spirit of order and time and structure. So Aquarius is the primordial order, the primordial times, the primordial structures. So Aquarius is literally the space where order becomes possible, where things become potential, where we have the potentiality. It may not have been done yet, because what happens is that in the order that comes before, that's where life is possible. It doesn't necessarily mean that life has happened yet. And so moving through Pluto and Aquarius, but it will happen eventually. That's like one of the laws and structures and orders, is that it will happen eventually. So moving through Pluto and Aquarius, part of the power, because that's what Pluto offers to us. And if you can be aware of what the power is that's being offered to you, you are far less likely to have someone with Pluto influences or who is working in Plutonian-based magic come through and screw you over, which in my opinion is, I would like to be well armed for that. Don't bring it here. So, with Pluto and Aquarius, that Aquarian energy, it's the order that comes before the life is offered. It's the order that comes before. So say that, because Capricorn, let's put this into like an applicatory sense. Capricorn has a lot to do with like our hierarchies and our structures and receiving promotions in the world, or if you're not doing the work, having your demotions and being dropped down ranks, or having there be issues or problems. But if you're doing the work, then you have the time to create a different sort of circumstance for yourself. That's also true. That's one of the things I've learned about Saturn retrograde. This Saturn retrograde, with Saturn about to go direct tomorrow on the 15th as I'm filming this. Yeah, Saturn retrograde, if you could get everything in order during a Saturn retrograde, when Saturn goes direct, you have extra time to do what you need to do to give yourself another level. So extra tidbit of information, especially since Saturn is one of the rulers of Aquarius. All right, cool. With the order that comes before, pattern recognition. For those of you who have pattern recognition, welcome to having the prerequisites for sitting semi-comfortably while Pluto is in Aquarius, because pattern recognition, and I think I said this either in the previous video, the part 1 of this, or in another video somewhere, where if it happens once, let me be aware of it. If it happens twice, I need to pay attention, because it's probably going to happen a third time. And do I want it to happen a third time? Is it really going to happen a third time, or can I cut it off? Why is this being presented to me? Do I need it to happen again? Do I need to reorder and restructure so that it cannot happen again? And by the third time, the way that my spirits sit with me, then it's serious. Then you've just woven a fate, and it is woven. It's not just some like possible happenstance circumstance thing. It's, we see you. It's bound more than once, more than twice, thrice. So they're pretty serious with me about that. So I'm going to present it to you in a semi-serious sort of way, because it is pretty serious. You weave it 3 times and, you know, kablam, kablooey, it's done. So the order that comes before, what's another good example of this? You ever notice something earlier in the day? You ever notice something? It could be the weather, it could be the traffic, it could be anything. You ever notice something earlier on in the day, and then later in the day, something happens, and you're like, oh, that's why that happened this morning. Oh, that's why I saw that thing earlier. Oh, that's why I was feeling that way earlier. Because it's primal, it's primordial, so we might not always have the words to explain it, but the awareness of it is pertinent. So you might not have the words to explain it, but it's there and you're aware. So being at the end of when that actually does happen, when the life is delivered, when the order is ordered and we are aware that the order is ordered, it was already ordered over here. Same thing with like divinations. That's actually a pretty good example. Let's look at divinations. Like if you're pulling tarot cards or you're working with the runes, or there's so many other ways to divinate also, okay? But if you're working with divinations and you are looking into the future and you're seeing into the future, oh, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. The only way, there's other ways too, but this is in my practice. The only way that that information about the future is going to come through is if the order is already set up so that those points in time are unavoidable. The only way that those cards could come through or those messages could come through is because those points in time in the future have become unavoidable because the order that already exists somehow. The way that my spirits sit and read with me, they do not bring me messages if the order is somehow free or not bound to anything. Well, not bound to like order, prior order and structure. Which, when that first started happening, I was like, but I just want to know what's going to happen. And they were like, make some decisions, kid. Go create some stuff. So there's that too. So that's how my divinations work. But that's also a really good example is like the way that my spirits work with time with me is they're not gonna show me what's happening. Well, one, if I don't need to know, but two, they're not gonna show me what's happening if those points in time have not already become unavoidable somehow. Because there is a back and forth. Sometimes things are unavoidable and the order is already set up in the background for that point in time to kind of like have to occur or have to happen. But sometimes that previous order or structure has not yet bound points in time, and so you kind of have some wiggle room, some free room to go and make decisions and create and do things a little bit differently. Now, because this has to do with Pluto and Aquarius, because it has to do with social circles and social interactions, a lot of the times we're going to be seeing that other people come with an order and a structure that we don't necessarily know about. We don't know about, if you're just meeting somebody for the first time, you may not know about their previous exes or their friends, or how have they screwed people over, or how have they been kind to people? What kind of person are they? You don't really know the order and structure of that person until you spend some time with them. We're kind of restricted to that. We don't know all of those things about a person until we do spend time with them. Thank you, Saturn, the god of time. We can't know them until we spend time with them. We can't know, and we learn about who they are because we're paying attention to their patterns. We're paying attention to their order and their structure and their priorities sometimes as well in their life. How do they treat people? How are they greeting people? You know, how do they treat themselves? Also, things like what kind of food do they eat? Not just what kind of food, how do they take care of themselves? What are they interested in and why are they interested in those things? And do you agree with who they are based on what you have learned about them? Are they someone who's safe to be around? Do they match up with your world? Do they match up with your life or not? And Pluto moving through that offers us this the underworld riches of the magic, because Pluto is also very magical. The underworld riches of the magic of being able to understand the order that comes before where we are now. There's so many different ways that is going to become applicable. The real life, real world application of that is going to be very, very focused on, like I said, with the social circles and social groups, like understanding that people come with an order before you meet them. People, if you're in a group with multiple people, every single person comes with an order before. There was an order and a structure before you met up in that space, and that's going to determine what's possible within that circle. It's kind of like, it's about who you know and who you trust, rather than what the institutions can offer to you in this era. It's a little bit different. The institutions and the hierarchies and the structures, that was more about Pluto and Capricorn. And it's still gonna be applicable because you can't be in certain rooms if there isn't institution and structure and hierarchy. But it's also going to be very, very much about who is in that room with you and why are they there and who were they before they walked in that door. Now, if you're looking at it in a sense of more, okay, so not just that physical world application. If you're looking at it in a sense of more, maybe you're looking for more money or more hierarchy or more time with your friends or more time with your art, okay? More of something. You're looking for more more of something. Then this era, Pluto in Capricorn was like, I gotta build it then. I want more of something, I gotta build it. I'm gonna grow the structure, I'm gonna make the structure, I'm gonna enter into a hierarchy and stay in my consistency and be that person. I'm gonna shape shift into that person and keep consistent with it, and I'm gonna become that person. It's like fake it till you make it kind of, but fake it till you make it in a way where you are being true to that version of you who's in the future, who has what they want. Pluto in Capricorn, okay? Pluto in Aquarius, Pluto in Aquarius, a little bit different. It's a little bit different. It is asking us to kind of go in reverse order. What's already set up? What's already here? How can we work with that? What were we aware of? What were we not aware of? This era is also going to really ask that we get comfortable understanding our social blind spots. Social blind spots, structural blind spots. We don't always know the weak points. We don't always know the strengths. We don't always know. We don't always know. We don't always know. You can't always know, and we don't always know. I have a feeling that for better or for worse, okay, because the offering of innocence can offer us many wisdoms, and also sometimes it sucks to have your innocence offered for wisdoms. Sometimes that is a painful process. I have a feeling that this era is going to be very, very innocence offering related, in the sense that there is more room for betrayal in this era than there was in Pluto and Capricorn. Pluto and Capricorn betrayals and manipulations and hurt was pretty cutthroat, straightforward, and dry. This one, betrayals and manipulations, are probably going to be a little bit more personal. Not that they weren't personal in the previous era, but they're going to be even more personal in this one. They're going to be more personal, and they're going to be more predictable too. They're going to be more predictable, thank goodness, because if you really get good at reading the order that comes before a thing happens, prediction, it's like an era of prediction, being able to predict. Also too, that's true. This is also going to be an era or a time where like our structures are shape-shifting. Capricorn is about the shape-shifting of that magic, that's true. And also this is going to be a time, because if you think about it, okay, go back to the rulers, go back to, what is happening with my hands? I don't know, I'm really excited about it. Go back to the rulers of Aquarius, Uranus, and Saturn, okay? It's the parent and the kid. Think about all the crazy lessons that Saturn brings to us. Think about all the harsh lessons. They're not just harsh. One of the things I've learned is that if you sit through the shadow of Saturn, it's going to offer you some light and some gold at the end, okay? So think about all of those lessons, whether they're harsh or not. Think about how much we learn when we sit with Saturn. Think about how much we learn. Wisdom and wisdom and wisdom and wisdom and wisdom and wisdom. And now we're going to be sitting with Pluto and the parent of Saturn. Saturn's already the father, so we're going to be sitting with the grandfather and the father. Pluto, the ruler who is the grandchild, that's 3. That's 3. Golly, that's 3. The grandfather, the father, and the child, Pluto, Saturn, Uranus. All 3 of them are going to be together for 20 years. And they're sitting there teaching us, helping us learn lessons. Oh, here's how those 3, because 3 is really about time magic too. You have the past, the present, the future. And I was talking about order earlier. If it happens once, twice, okay, I got to pay attention because the 3rd time. So knowing the order that comes before is very important. We have been introduced with Pluto and Capricorn. That's the father and the son. We have been introduced with Pluto and Capricorn to, this is the way that things need to be done. This is the order. This is the structure. This is how we need to keep our boundaries. This is how we are betrayed by people more often than not. So how are we going to protect ourselves from that? How are we also going to involve the systems in things like justice and things like jobs? And now both of those are moving into a place where the grandfather is. The grandfather. The grandfather. Not just the father. Think about how serious Saturn is as a dad. Think about how serious Saturn is as a father. And we're going to have the grandfather. Think about how much serious wisdom as a practitioner there will be offered to you. Recently, I offered to, I'm not going to tell you who I offered to or how it happened because that's part of my practice, but recently I was making offerings at the altar and I put out, there was a son, a father, and a grandfather included. There's other there, okay, but the primordial. And I don't normally make offerings all the time. Maybe I'm probably going to start. I don't normally make offerings all the time to the primordial beings because I focus more on what is already in this world rather than what has come before it. I have a feeling that's about to change for myself. And for the rest of us too, because you know what, when Pluto moves through something, we're going to be influenced by it, whether we want to be or not. So, but I remember it wasn't the father, it was one of the sons. One of the sons at the table after I made, or like during the process of me making the offering to that primordial being, was like, oh, we're getting really serious. And I could feel the kind of like it sucked all the fun out of the altar. Not that there was not fun after that, but it was like, oh, this is big work. I just remember one of the spirits who's at my altar sometimes when I make offerings is like jolly, okay, happy, jolly, happy, and just like a good, like the ha-has, the big laughters. And that was the spirit that was really like, oh, we're here to work now. Okay, let me put my serious face on. Let me put my serious tone on. Let me be serious about this, because if the grandfather's here, we have some serious work to do. And it's a shift. It's a shift. It's about to be a very serious 20 years. Very serious, because if you can track what happens before, if you have good pattern recognition and you're able to be aware of it, I have the awareness of what has come before this moment. I have the awareness of what has come before, and I'm able to stop that moment because I had the awareness of this pattern recognition. So now I don't have to go through that. There's a positive to this too. You want some stuff to happen? You need some stuff to happen? Okay. Well, this era will offer you the wisdom of how to set up the order to create those things, how to set up the order to make those things happen. Now, I talk about that again, and every time I try to talk about it in a non-worldly application, I feel like I get pulled away from it, because that's kind of the only way that I know how to relate this information. But it really is going to be an era where we just have incredible amounts of wisdom that come through that are not for me to relate to you. They're not for you to talk to anybody else about. It's just like this intrinsic wisdom, this intrinsic knowing, where we are probably not going to have the words to explain how we're feeling or what we're receiving from the grandfather, the father, and the son aspect, and those spirits, the primordial beings that have birthed time and order and structure and that sort of magic, who then go on to birth other versions of magic, really. It's crazy. There's gonna be, if you really are able to hone the craft of the order that comes before, if you're able to hone that craft in the next 20 years, then you will have received the riches that Pluto is offering to you as it passes through Aquarius. it's just wild. It's wild to me. And it's so serious. It's wild to me and it's so serious. And there's so much change. Like if you start to study this on your own, the order that comes before, because that sort of magic, if you're able to understand the order that comes before and you're able to actually not just be aware of it, but start to participate in it, start to create orders that come before, that's primordial magic. That's an ancient form of magic. That is a magic that only the spirits can teach you and you teach yourself. That is a magic that cannot be reached through this phone to you. It's not a form of magic that is the way that I experience learning about this form of magic, so that I'm not just talking about like how wild it is, because it's wild and it's serious. It's a wild sort of magic. It can be unpredictable, order predictable, but the order that comes before, it's like setting up an experiment. Interestingly enough, this is kind of how I learned to practice magic. Okay, I didn't really think about it like that. There's other ways I learned to practice magic too, but this is one of the main ways I learned. Just like experimenting, here's the order, this is the result, here's the order, this is the result, here's the order, and like refining my practice through that process. Interesting. That's Pluto in Aquarius though. Yeah. The way that I experience this sort of magic is a lot of the times when I make offerings to the gods in my practice or the spirits in my practice, and I make those offerings, it is very much just like this becoming. I now become that wisdom that is offered in return to me. It's not something that I think about and then I learn it. It's not something that I'm really feeling and then I learn it. It's something that just is offered to my mind, offered to the space that is me. And I think a pretty good job of translating a lot of that stuff into these sorts of videos, but it's not something that in the moment is explicable. It's a very like stricken is maybe not the right word, just this sort of like in awe of, oh, it's a realization sort of magic. These realizations, and it comes through as this beautiful, beautiful offering. It is an offering. It's an offering of wisdoms, and it's an offering of gifts. It's an offering. Because that sort of magic, to be able to practice or receive that sort of magic, you're practicing a form of magic that is older than the gods. Not the primordial beings, but the gods as we know it, the god of this and the god of that, and the gods, okay? The house structures of gods, the pantheons of gods, the trees of the different gods. This sort of magic is before those trees existed. This sort of magic is before those houses, before we were able to articulate them as human beings on the earth. Because at least for me and my stories, and this is the part that's going to be in the blog that's attached to this video, okay? For me, those primordial beings in my practice, in the tree of spirits that I offer to, which is the Norse tree, okay, just for clarity, that primordial being, well, one of them, there's many of them, but one of them, that primordial being, after they pass away, their body is then used to create the order of our space, of humanity. So of course we are able to relate to that sort of magic because we're literally built out of it. We literally come from it. It is literally a part of us. And it's a part of the world that is around us. That's also true in its essence, in its, and the thing about it is that I've learned is like, it lays dormant until you can activate the order of it. It lays dormant until you decide to participate in it. It's here, it's around us, but it's not when you see like the angel numbers, okay, or you see the signs and the messages, or you see the synchronicities, it's related to that sort of magic, but that's more about order. Oh, I saw this number at this time. Order. How many birds did I see? What kind of birds were they? That's order. That's structure. This sort of magic is, before you leave the house, having a knowing, because your spirit is fed and your spirits are fed, is having the knowing. And then you walk outside the house and you see the ravens and you say, I knew there was something going on. The order then becomes confirmation for the magic that you're practicing, rather than the order being the magic itself. Actually, that was pretty genius. That was pretty genius. I don't normally mark my genius quotes, but that was a pretty genius one. That was a pretty genius quote for this next era. That's true. And in note to that as well, with Aquarius being the life giver. It's the life giver, the water bearer. It is where life comes from. Where does life come from? You got me, all right? But it's where life comes from, the life giver. The primordial beings who have given life to us also. That's true. When you give life, life is returned to you. It is the cycle. And if it's the cycle back and forth, if you're looking, and that's what I was talking about when I give offerings, that's really when I experience this kind of magic. Okay, so there's that. And then in like real world application, something to study, because Pluto and Saturn both ask that we study the tools, the weapons, manipulations of other people, so that we can keep the boundaries how we need them to, so that we can profit and gain and not have to be under strain. Beautiful. Pluto is about the will, making those decisions. Saturn is about, here is the order, here's the structure, and the time frames and time loops, time lengths. There's somebody in my comments recently said that they gotta get a you know who you are, and that they have to get a notebook just for Saturn stuff. And I laughed, because I haven't ever shown this on camera before, but hold on, I have something to show to you. I have a whole notebook, binder. I have a whole binder in here about different, how would I explain this? I'm learning about time, and how that time, it's basically quantum physics, okay, except for it's not just quantum physics, it's like the stuff that I study when it comes to Saturn and order and time, and that magic is so complicated. So it has its own book, okay? And this is the stuff, I don't really talk about this stuff on the internet yet, because there's so much. I started these studies I've been studying it for my whole life, but like actively studying it, it's only been like a year or so, ish. That's not true. It's been longer than that. I didn't know that it was this until about a year ago or so. So it got its own notebook once I figured out what it is. So once I have some conclusions, I'm sure years from now, they'll eventually go on the internet, but time magic is, there's a reason that people how in all the stories and the lore and the myths about magicians, people who study time magic go crazy. There's a reason for it. I have to study this slowly. But when I have some answers, I think it would be cool to bring them to the internet. But anyways, get yourself a Saturn book. Okay, so back to the study part of this though. If you wanted to study the Pluto, Saturn, and Uranus connection, look at when life is given to you from other people, because this really has to do with other people. Or I guess if nature were to give you offerings as well, or like how nature feeds you, or like if there's, I don't know, there's squirrels that come and bring me gifts on my porch, sort of thing, you know? So like there's nature that brings you life, that's going to be applicable too, but it rules our social interactions for a reason, Aquarius does. So looking at those social interactions, if someone gives you life, how does it feed you, and do you agree with it? Because how we feed life to each other and how that life is given, and it could be also, because it's Pluto, okay, so how that life could be taken without it being offered is, that's a whole other area that we'll talk about in just a second. But the giving of life, so forget about that for just a second. I know I said it, but just for a moment, the giving of life, it being offered, do you agree with how it feels and how it changes you? How does it alter you? And that's really like, I said in the last video, I was going to call this video the power of change, like Pluto and Aquarius, the power of change, because that's really what it is. I come with an order. This video, I'm going to use this video as an example. You know what? Because we're here. I come with an order prior to having sat down to film this, prior than having sat down to edit this. I come with an order. I have a practice that's in an order. I feed myself in a specific order. You know, I hold my relationships in a specific order. I hold my time in a specific order and a specific structure. And I also hold myself in a specific order, you know, like the way that I feel about myself and the way that I think about myself. And like, I have a specific order, as does everybody. But when I come here and I'm offering these videos, that is an offering of life. It's an offering, it's a gift, it's a, at least that's how I see it, is like, I could choose not to show up and go do something else. You know what I mean? So it's an offering, it's an offering, it's an offering, it's an offering. And in return to that, how is it that you receive it? How is it that you receive it? How does it alter you? How does it change you? And do you agree with how it alters you and how it changes you? I won't ever be offended if someone is like, this is not for me. Cool, go do what is for you then. Because how we are fed life, how we receive life, it does change us. The food you eat changes you. The people you talk to change you. And what is it that they say? Well, one, guilty by association because you're around the people, but you become like the 5 people that you're closest to or something like that. It's pretty true. That's pretty true. That's pretty accurate, actually. That's pretty accurate. But paying attention to that, studying that, is going to be really important. The offering of life, the receiving of life, and how it changes you. And notice too, if you need to understand your own power through this, because Pluto is also about power, not just the death and the life. Sometimes death needs to be offered. So let's talk about more of the Pluto aspects of this. Sometimes death needs to be offered. If you are able to honor death in the process of there being a death around and offering death as a life, as a gift, as an offering, then you have revered the process of life and death. Sometimes death is the life that we need. Sometimes death is the life that we need when it comes to our offerings and it comes to our practices. We can't constantly always be in growth. I think I might not be a person I would want to be if that was true. You know? There's some things I've done in my life I don't agree with. There's a person I've been in the past I don't want to be. That's true. That's true. Power of change. I've allowed myself to receive the deaths that I've needed so that I could bring more life in of who I actually want to be. So that's applicable also in the receiving of life. And how is it returned? It's a cycle. It's a cycle. This is the wind that carries the air. The wind and the air that carries the clouds. That's a part of a cycle. The rain cycle. The wind and the air that carries the clouds. Wind and the air that carries the clouds. It's like deliverance is the word that comes to mind. Deliverance. Interesting. Yeah, the power of deliverance. Because it's not just what the life is, it's also how it is delivered. You ever had somebody just be in a nasty, foul mood, making you food, making you a meal, and then you sit down to eat that food with them? Dude, I can't eat that kind of food. My stomach hurts after that kind of food. I can't eat that kind of food. A nasty, foul person, a nasty, mean person, angry, mad, cooking food up. My tummy hurts after that. I'm like, I don't want to eat it. No. How is the life that you are receiving altering you and changing you? And if you wanted to look at, I started saying this and I went on a side tangent. If you want to look at your own power, how does the life that you give to other people alter them? How does the life that you give to yourself alter you? That's a great study too, because you're not gonna ever understand the full, total, comprehensive impact that you have on another person and their experience. You're not them. You don't know the totality of their experience, but if you ever have the opportunity to receive the reflection of that or the understanding from their side of things, that's also true. But just remember that them telling you about it is also an offering of life to you. See, it returns. It's so good. So good. It's so good. It's so, so good. So I think I'm gonna close it there. I think that's pretty good. I think I'm gonna close it there. That's a pretty comprehensive look into the grandness, the grandness of this era. After seeing how serious the spirits in my practice have been recently, and also receiving, there's like so much of this information I've received just over the previous like several days, okay? Like literally just like the previous several days. There's been a foundation set for a long time about Pluto and Aquarius and a whole bunch of stuff, but it wasn't until recently where I was like, I need to do a deep dive on Uranus. I need to take a deep dive into that. I need to figure it out. Oh, and did I? Oh my gosh. Oh gosh. So, apply as needed. If you are looking at your chart, wherever Aquarius is, the house that it's in, any placements, those are going to offer you the power of understanding the order before. That's the area of your life where you need to understand the order that comes before. Everything that we talked about in this video. The order that comes before. And that's also where you're able to set up the order that comes before so that you can receive what you want. Noted, okay? And then the skills of setting up the order before so that you can receive what you want. Those are going to be the placements in Aquarius. The 11th house, also ruled by Aquarius in our modern structure. So if you're looking at the 11th house, any placements there, learn how to protect them. Learn how to, and the energy, the sign that it's ruled by, learn how to utilize that energy so that you can be protected. Learn how to be in that energy. Say that you had a 11th house ruled by Aries. Okay, you're going to need to be in that fiery. Go, start. Say you had an 11th house that's ruled by Scorpio. You're going to need to learn how to be in the underworld and in that power energy, the power of you in those social spaces, and learning how to protect that energy and learning how to protect those placements is going to be really important. The 11th house, whether it's ruled by Aquarius in your chart or not, the 11th house is going to be where our susceptibilities are, or like our downfalls could be, or where people could intercept the power that Pluto is trying to offer to us. That will be in the 11th house, no matter what it's ruled by in this next era. Where Aquarius is, that's where you have more of like the positive powers. People could still intercept around that space because you're probably more social in that area of your life, wherever Aquarius is. And that's going to be where there's like a positive power. Now, if you're able to protect everything that's in the 11th house and you're able to work in the positivity of that Aquarian space, more than likely, you're going to be receiving some positive from the 11th house as well, okay? Because they indirectly influence each other, but just with the way the structures are set up in astrology, at least how I study them and practice them, make sure that the 11th house is protected. Make sure the 11th house is protected, okay? Protected. We've been through 16 years of making sure that the 10th house and Capricorn is protected. You could also, if you wanted to get really nitty gritty into it, check out the 8th house placements that you have and how that relates to both Aquarius and your 11th house. That is going to be probably actually important to do. If you have Pluto, if you have Aquarius in the 8th house, good luck. I have Pluto moving out of my 8th house as someone who is Scorpio ruled. Good luck. You're going to make it, okay? And also, good luck. I don't know that I'm gonna put that in the video or not, but Pluto moving through its home is a hard placement to have. There you go. Gratitude, reverence, and love to you. Keep doing what you need to do. Keep up your brew. That's also true. And gratitude, reverence, and love to the indigenous spirits of this land where I sit, talk, walk, and stand, and where you are receiving this information and these messages right now. That is true. That is true. Thank you. Thank you. Wow. A different era awaits us. A different era awaits us. Yeah. So there it is. I'll talk to you soon.